Water punched the cabin hard enough to bend light. The jet had come down belly first, skidding across black water like a skipping stone, then stuttered to a halt with a groan that felt personal. Ceiling panels swung, oxygen masks tangled like nooses, and the world tilted nose down as the Indian Ocean poured itself inside. Lena Moore was already moving. Her hands were flayed where the exit handle bit her palms, but she wrenched, twisted, braced a knee, and the door screamed open. Night air hit like ice. Salt, fuel, wind. She launched the slide raft with her shoulder and a curse, grabbed the guide rope, and shouted over the metal thunder. Single file. Hands on the rope. Eyes on me. Move. A man in a suit froze in the aisle, pupils blown wide. I can't swim, he said to the floor. You won't need to, Lena said. She ripped his belt free, looped it to the guide rope, shoved him into the mouth of night. Step. Breathe. Live. The floor creaked, sagged. Somewhere a phone kept playing a bright little jingle, cheerful and deranged. A child cried, high and thin, and disappeared under coats and arms. Lena vaulted seats, scooped him out, put his hand on the rope. Hold this and you win, she said. Ready? 1, 2. The plane lurched. She didn't wait for 3. She launched him toward the slide, then followed with a mother who insisted she could walk right up until her ankle folded. Brace, someone yelled. The cabin sagged another inch. Water hissed through the forward galley like a bad secret. Emergency lights strobed the world red, then darker red, then almost gone. A man was at the door beside her, soaked blazer, collar open. Not crew. Calm eyes. Winds cross-loading the rafts, he said, voice low and flat. Rotate them 30 degrees or the swell flip someone. Who are you? Lena snapped, grabbing for another shoulder, another wrist. Right now? He took a knife from a pocket like he'd forgotten it was there. Your second pair of hands. He vanished into the water with the clean efficiency of someone who learned to move without splashing. The raft bucked, he cut a dragging strap and the wind caught it properly, turning chaos into a shape that wanted to live. Back through here. Lena shoved a panicking passenger past the beverage cart jammed in the aisle. Follow the rope, not the noise. A junior flight attendant froze in the doorway, pupils pinwheeling. I can't. You can, Lena said, grabbing her shoulders. Command raft. Take count. She pushed her through and turned as someone screamed from 21C. The overhead bin had collapsed and twisted, pinning a woman across the chest. Lena climbed onto the armrests, planted her boots, and hauled. The metal flexed but didn't give. The man in the soaked blazer was suddenly there again, shouldering in beside her. He braced a forearm, put his other shoulder under the edge, and lifted. Something in his body popped with a soft wet sound. He didn't react. The bin gave. The woman gasped. They dragged her free into water that was now at midcalf and rising. Go, Lena said. Slide. Rope. Don't look back. The woman hesitated, eyes white. But you. Move. She moved. The man steadied the door with the same bad shoulder and flashed Lena a quick, incongruous grin. You're doing well. You're bleeding, Lena said. So are you, he said, and looked past her, already reading the room again. Fuselage's taking on forward. This goes under soon. Lena took a half breath that wanted to be a full one and turned back to the cabin. A stroller banged off her shin. Someone was trying to carry a suitcase through a dying airplane. She ripped it out of his hands, pitched it, and shoved him toward the night. Hands free. Rope only. Move. Water boiled up through the carpet. The jet made a sound like a ship regretting a promise. Lena pushed 3 more, then 4, then a 5th who kept saying sorry into the air. She hooked a strap around an elderly man's wrist and hopped with him to the threshold. Hold tight, she said. Step and sit, don't jump. He stepped. Saturday. Slid. Gone into the dark. The man in the blazer dove again. He tied a quick bowline with one hand around a strut on the raft, set the angle, cut another tangle before it became a trap. The ocean slapped, cold with intent. The cabin lights pulsed once and died. In that dark, Lena felt her job like heat. Count, guide, decide. She went by voices and shapes and the pull of air. Another mother. Another teenager whose teeth chattered too fast to form words. Then there were none she could see. Go, the man said in her ear. Now it's you. I'm crew, she said. I'm last. He didn't argue. He flipped a switch she couldn't see, tossed a lifeline into the water, then jerked his chin to the slide. Last is now. She went. The slide was slick with spray. The night tried to take her breath. The raft flexed under her weight and hands grabbed her, pulled, settled. She spun to count heads. 12, someone said, voice shaking. Another raft bobbed 30 feet away with 6 more shapes in orange. Further off, a blinking light, then another. A helicopter thudded somewhere beyond the wind, a blade noise you could feel in your ribs. The man hit the raft with a grunt and started tying off with calm, precise motions. He made a final hitch, set the knife down, and looked at her. A searchlight swung across his face, washed him pale, then gone. Name's Seo Kang-Jin, he said, like it mattered less than the rope in his hands. He glanced at her torn palms. You'll need those cleaned, Lena. Her heartbeat stumbled. She had not told him her name. How do you? The beam swung wide, bleaching the world for a second. Far beyond it, a long low shape ghosted without lights. No numbers. No markers. Too close. Too slow. Watching. Not rescue. Kang-Jin's posture changed without moving. Heads down, he said quietly. That boat isn't here to help. Who are they? Lena asked. The kind that count survivors, he said. The helicopter's light swept back, stabbing the dark boat square, and for a heartbeat Lena saw 4 figures, one on the bow with something shouldered that wasn't a fishing rod. The light moved on. The boat killed its engine. The night grew teeth. A child whimpered. Lena pulled him against her, tucked the foil blanket around his ears. Breathe like me, she said. In, out. She looked up at Kang-Jin. We can't sit still. Agreed. He cut the trailing line that kept them neatly in place, then pointed. On my count, shift weight left. They moved as a sloppy chorus and the raft slewed, catching wind at a safer angle. The other raft bumped them, hands reached because hands always do. Kang-Jin sliced the snag that could bind them together and flip both. The rafts separated. Drift took over. The ocean turned them into harder targets. A crewman on the other raft raised a flare. Don't, Kang-Jin started. The flare tore open the sky. Red washed the world. The dark boat came alive, throttle rising, wake lifting like a ridge. Down. Lena pushed the child under the raft's lip and covered 2 elderly passengers with her own back. The engine roar built, closer and closer. Another rotor thundered in from the east. A second helicopter. A loudspeaker cracked the air with Tagalog, then English, then something Lena didn't recognize. The dark boat hesitated, turned its bow, then slewed away in a dirty curve, wake fizzing in the red light. Lena's lungs found air. She counted without thinking. 12 here, 6 there, plus the far light, maybe 4? She couldn't see. The math was sand. A rescue swimmer knifed into the sea and came up grinning through a mouthful of waves. Kids first, he shouted. Take him, Lena said, lifting the boy. The harness snapped. The cable took him. He went up like a miracle attached to a winch. The mother followed, fingers bone-white on the strap until hands at the door peeled them loose. Spray scoured faces raw. The sea kept trying to make them forget what staying upright felt like. The helicopter held, its downdraft bullying the water into patterns. The dark boat was a bruise on the horizon now, running blacked out, unwilling to admit defeat. The swimmer came back for the next. A teenager who couldn't stop shaking. Then a man wheezing through a borrowed inhaler. Then a woman with a head wound who tried to give up her turn and got physically lifted anyway. Your turn, the swimmer yelled to Lena. I'm crew, she said. I'm last. You're hypothermic, he said, matter of fact, already offering the harness. I need you conscious. She looked to Kang-Jin. He didn't argue either. Go, he said. I'll be behind you. You're injured, she said, meaning more than his shoulder. He smiled without warmth. I'm inconvenient, not broken. The harness bit cold into her ribs. The cable took her weight. The raft fell away, orange coin on a churning plate. Spray blew her hair into her eyes. She kept them on Kang-Jin until the door swallowed her. Inside smelled like oil and wet rope and relief. Hands pulled her to a bench. A medic pressed blankets and something hot into her fingers. She looked back out into the door's brutal rectangle of wind and night. Kang-Jin was smaller down there, just another shape with a knife and a plan. He pushed a panicked man's hand into the right place on the rope and swatted his shoulder like a coach. He set the angle of the raft again with a twitch of line. He looked up once, found her, and in that 1 second she saw a decision pass through his eyes that wasn't about him at all. The swimmer took him next, because there was a limit to how long you could be useful with one arm. Kang-Jin rose slow and steady and didn't look away from her until the door cut him off. The helicopter banked. The pilot murmured coordinates to someone on a cutter below. The door gunner swung the searchlight. Far off, the black hull flickered into shape again, stubborn and patient. The loudspeaker warned. The boat veered, teased, withdrew. The crew chief shouted over the rotors. We're setting down on the cutter. Medics will take it from there. Check the second raft first, Lena said, voice scraped raw. Woman with head wound. Man with asthma. They'll lie to look brave. Yes, The cable sang. The sea tilted like a slow planet. The cutter's deck rose, a bright rectangle of certainty. The skids kissed steel, the helicopter shuddered, and sound went from scream to roar to human again. They led survivors out, blankets walking on legs. Someone cried. Someone laughed. Someone vomited quietly and apologized to no one. Lena stood on metal that didn't move and felt her body remember heat, then pain. Kang-Jin dropped to the deck a moment later, cradling the bad shoulder. A medic reached for him and he shook his head once, then relented when the medic frowned harder. He scanned reflexively, doors, ladders, faces, hands. He found Lena. For a second they just breathed in the same rectangle of light. You okay? He asked. Ask me when I stop shaking, she said. He tried to smile, it bent and failed. He looked past her to the dark horizon. The unlit boat was gone. The feeling it left wasn't. An officer with a clipboard began to speak in the voice institutions use when they're trying not to scare you. Names, numbers, the promise of blankets and phones. He asked for statements. He asked if anyone saw anything unusual. Lena thought of the bright little ringtone still chiming inside the sinking fuselage. She thought of how the dark boat had killed its engine like a man holding his breath to listen. She opened her mouth, closed it, and said, yes. Kang-Jin watched the officer write nothing that mattered, because this was the part of the night where important things tried to hide behind paperwork. He edged closer to Lena, not touching, standing like a wall that pretended to be air. When we get ashore, he said quietly, don't go anywhere alone. She turned her head a fraction. Excuse me? Someone paid for what happened, he said. They'll want certainty. They'll come counting. You talk like you know them. I grew up learning the grammar, he said. The officer finished with a weak smile and moved on. A medic taped Lena's palms with practiced hands. The tape tugged skin and brought heat tears to her eyes. She blinked them away and looked at Kang-Jin again. Seo, was it? She asked. Kang-Jin, he said. Seo is the family name. Right, she said. Thank you, for the raft. He tilted his head as if the word thank caught him off guard. You did the hard part. The cutter's horn bellowed. The ship turned toward Colombo, lights along the deck stuttering into patterns. The ocean widened behind them, swallowing metal and secret and night. A gust hit, clean and salt and cold. Lena pulled the blanket tighter. She looked at the black where the unmarked boat had been and felt the shape of a problem that would not float away. Listen, she said, voice low. Back there, you called me by my name. Kang-Jin's face didn't change. His eyes softened a fraction. I heard it in the cabin, he said. Someone shouted for you. She stared at him. No one had. Wind rattled the stretcher racks. The officer's pen scratched a sound like insects. Engines thrummed steady underfoot. Lena stood very still, the blanket a small tent of warmth around shaking shoulders, and measured the man who had smiled at pain and cut lines like he loved knots and warned her about a boat no one else wanted to see. He looked back, unblinking, rain purling on his lashes, and for a moment she had the bone-deep sense that the crash wasn't the start of the night so much as an interruption in a story already moving. The cutter's lights gilded the edges of things and left their centers dark. The deck crew shouted distances. Colombo's coast threw a pale smear onto low clouds. Somebody on the far side of the deck began to pray in a language Lena didn't know. If you're hooked already, a voice in your ear would say if this night were a story, hit like and subscribe because what happens after the rescue is more dangerous than the crash. The sea hissed. The deck vibrated. Lena kept her eyes on the dark horizon and felt it watch back. Dawn bled into the harbor like pale milk poured into dark tea. Colombo woke in layers, horns, gulls, the clatter of crates, and the cutter slid into it with the quiet of bad news. They offloaded survivors into ambulances that hummed without sirens. A man with an official vest began herding them into lanes marked with duct tape and the promise of forms. Lena let herself be pulled along by motion and the memory of rope burn. Her palms were swaddled in crisp white tape. Her uniform stuck to her skin in cold ridges. When she looked back at the water, the night pretended it had never tried to keep her. A nurse with a silver cross at her throat took Lena's elbow. Private clinic. Quick checks, warm fluids. Then statements. Lena nodded, because nodding had momentum. The clinic was small, clean, the sort of place that knew how to keep a door shut. Someone wrapped a heated blanket over her shoulders and slid a cup of sweet tea into her good hand. She didn't taste it, her body drank it without consulting her. A doctor with quiet eyes checked pupils, pressed a light to the tape on her palms, listened to lungs that still sounded like surf. "You're going to shake for a while," he said. "Let your body do it." She kept shaking as a television in the corner turned the night into captions. Ditching in the Indian Ocean, investigation ongoing, possible mechanical, words lined up like they weren't afraid of being wrong. A thin banner crawled the bottom of the screen with numbers to call if you were waiting for someone who didn't pick up. The door opened and the temperature of the room changed without a shift in the air. Seo Kang-Jin stepped inside with his arm bound in a proper sling now, hair damp, shirt changed but not dry, a faint heat in his eyes that had nothing to do with fever. He scanned the corners the way men do when they expect doors to develop opinions. Only when he'd named everything did he look at her. "You all right?" he asked. "Apparently," she said. "Tea is a medical intervention." He almost smiled. Almost. Then his gaze flicked to the TV where a grainy photo of a long low boat flashed, captured by a fisherman's phone. No lights. No number. Kang-Jin's mouth thinned a fraction. "They're calling it a fishing vessel." "Was it?" Lena asked. "No." The clinic door opened again. A woman in a navy blazer and a lanyard stepped in on heels that did not slip. Her hair was precise, her eyes busier than her face. She flashed a badge too fast to register. "Roshika Jairiaria, Civil Aviation Liaison," she said with a practiced warmth. "Ms. Moore, Mr. Seo will need brief statements while details are fresh." "How fresh do you want them?" Kang-Jin asked, polite in a way that was not friendly. "As fresh as what you saw on the water," Roshika said smoothly. "Any unusual vessels?" Her attention felt like a hand searching pockets. Lena told her about the dark boat. Roshika didn't take notes. She nodded as if comfort were useful and lingered on Kang-Jin's sling a moment too long. "And you, sir? You were very active on the rafts." "I dislike idleness," he said mildly. "And you'll both be staying at the Green Pearl Hotel tonight," she continued, like a suggestion dressed as an instruction. "Transportation will be provided, for your safety." Kang-Jin made a small sound that might have been a laugh if it weren't so empty. "We have other arrangements." Roshika's smile faltered, briefly. "The Green Pearl has security. So do the people who pay for the Green Pearl's conference rooms," he said, voice still pleasant. "We'll be in touch." Roshika let the pause stretch just long enough to become something. Then she smiled like a last warning and left. The door latched softly. The room exhaled. "Not aviation," Kang-Jin said. "Who then?" Lena asked. Someone local who funnels contracts and silence, he said. A man called Pereira likes to put people like her between himself and questions. He flexed the fingers of his good hand. And if Pereira is involved, he didn't invent this. He took a phone call. From who? Kang-Jin met her eyes until she understood he was deciding whether to give her an answer that would follow her into sleep for the rest of her life. My father, he said at last, simply. Or someone who wants his approval. The words lay between them like a line drawn in chalk. Before she could step toward or away from it, the clinic's fluorescent lights shivered. Kang-Jin looked at the corridor without turning his head. We should go. Go where? Someplace with fewer official forms, he said. And more doors that lock from the inside. He paid in cash because cash was still a language. Lena left the tea where the blanket had learned her shape and followed him into heat. Colombo's morning yawned into their faces, tuk-tuks swarm whining, buses hissing, sun turning puddles into testimony. They took a tuk-tuk because it was faster than anything with doors. The driver's mirror had a paper garland and 3 gods. Kang-Jin named lefts and rights that didn't look like a route until they became one. Who are you? Lena asked finally, because the question had been getting heavier since the raft. A man with terrible instincts for retirement, he said. This isn't a joke, she said. I know, he said, and the fragments of humor disappeared like foam. I'm the son of a man who believes money is a weather system. I did business that made him less interested in me. I left before he could make that interest permanent. So she didn't want to say the word. It felt like a bruise you don't press in public. I'm from a family that used to own the hours in a certain part of Busan, he said. Now they rent them to other people. Lena stared at the moving city. And the boat. Contractors. Local muscle. Cheaper than bringing our own. Our. He lifted a shoulder. The sling creaked. Old habits. The tuk-tuk slowed at a light and in the mirror Lena saw a white van ease into their lane with the patience of a cat. Kang-Jin saw it too because of course he did. Tell him to take the next narrow street, he told the driver in steady, friendly Sinhala. The driver nodded, surprised at the accent. They darted into an alley where laundry lines tried to turn vehicles into flags. The van followed, too large, too smooth. Keep your head down, Kang-Jin said without looking at her. When we stop, move fast and left. Left to what? A door that owes me a favor. They jolted to a halt in a courtyard the size of a postcard. Kang-Jin paid before the driver could name a number and tugged Lena toward a metal door painted in a hurry. He knocked twice, then once, then crooked. The door opened just enough to be argued with. A line of bright flour on an apron. A baker's eyes that had seen worse. Uhane, Kang-Jin said softly. It's me. The eyes shifted to Lena's taped hands, to the sling, to the van that had managed to wedge itself halfway down the alley. The door opened wider. They slid inside. The smell of pandan and yeast folded around them like a better kind of blanket. Basement, the baker said, pointing with her chin. Go. They went down narrow steps into a cool space lined with sacks of flour and an old safe that belonged to a version of the city when safes made people feel superior to keys. Kang-Jin closed the door and turned a bolt that sounded like finality. He took out a phone shaped like a brick and dialed a number from muscle memory. Hyun, he said when someone picked up. Do you still hate me? A sigh like papers shifting across a long table. I hate what you remind me of. I need a picture of Pereira's ledger, Kang-Jin said. The one with the maintenance contracts. You watched the news. I watched a boat that wasn't news. Hyun's silence had a texture, the feel of a bookkeeper counting things the law couldn't pronounce. You're in Colombo? For the moment. You should leave, Hyun said. Your father's men are moving. I know, Kang-Jin said. They're large and think vans make them invisible. Hyun exhaled through his nose. Pereira's ledger is paper, not cloud. He keeps it inside a church because he thinks God won't let police open a priest's safe. He's not even Catholic. Of course not, Kang-Jin murmured. Send me what you have. I have guilt, Hyun said. And a cousin in the registrar's office. It will do, Kang-Jin said, and hung up. Lena sat on a sack of flour because sitting on the floor would have felt like giving up. You make phone calls like a person who expects them to cost lives, she said. They always do, he said. It's just a question of whose. She looked at his sling. At the way he stood between her and the door without making it obvious. At his shoes, still damp, at his shirt, patched where a button had given up. You said ledger, she said. As in, payments. As in someone paid for a maintenance delay at a time that made it look like a mechanical failure, he said. As in someone made sure the wrong part arrived 2 hours late and the right one never did. And the boat? Insurance that survivors were the wrong kind. Witnesses. Or people who know how to keep their faces while other people drown, he said, and that was the first time she heard something like disgust stain his voice. A shadow moved across the crack under the door. Steps paused. 2 sets. No speech. Kang-Jin put a finger to his mouth and killed the single bulb with a switch. The basement took on the temperature of held breath. The handle turned gently. Checked the bolt. Turned again, harder. Lena felt her throat ready a shout she had no intention of using. Kang-Jin's shoulder rolled in its sling like he was reminding his body of edges. He reached for the old safe with his good hand and found, by memory or luck, a long iron hook that used to be part of something that lifted sacks. The handle stopped turning. The steps didn't retreat. They reorganized. A click. A tool kissed the lock like a thief with manners. Kang-Jin put the iron against the floor, angled to meet the door if it gave. He found Lena's hand in the dark and pressed a cold rectangle into it. A satellite phone. 2 buttons, 1 number. If I go up, call this, he whispered. Say Busan Winter. Then run. What is that? A password, he said. For an old man who owes me a sin. The tool worried the lock. The bolt held. For now. The sounds stopped. Silence, then a breath. A soft scraping like tape peeled off metal. They're sealing the eye, Kang-Jin breathed. No peephole. They'll gas if they brought it. Gas. Kitchen gas if they're stupid, he said. Something kinder if they're not. Her heart climbed into her mouth and refused to leave. She smelled nothing but flour and the ghost of pandan. It didn't matter. Fear has a scent even when air is clean. The steps withdrew. The hallway stayed listening. Lena exhaled and didn't feel better. We can't stay, she said. No, he agreed. We need ink. Ink. Signatures, he said. Pereira writes like a man who thinks paper outruns fire. Where? St. Jude on Lotus Road, he said. Small church with a big safe. He keeps the ledger there because it makes him feel untouchable. And how do we get it? By making Roshika help us, he said, almost pleased with the symmetry. She has a key card whether she knows it or not. You think she'll hand it over? I think she'll bump into you at a noodle stall, spill sauce on her blazer, and take it off for 1 careless second. Lena stared at him in the dark and felt a laugh try to find its way through the wreckage of the morning. You're serious. Deeply. And if we're wrong? We won't be, he said, and in that confidence she heard every bad lesson he'd had to learn to survive the people who taught him. Somewhere above them, a bell rang that didn't belong to any church. The bakery opened its front door to customers with the unstoppable optimism of bread. The alley filled with voices and haggling and a radio playing a love song through static. Kang-Jin eased the bolt back. The door sighed. The hallway was empty except for the flower handprint the baker had left to mark which way to run. They moved up into the scent of fresh buns and ordinary life. Uhane tilted her head at them without looking up. 2 minutes, she said. Then you are gone. Thank you, Lena said. For what? The baker asked. For knowing which kind of fear is worse. They stepped into the alley with their heads down like people who belonged to the city. The white van was gone. The memory of it remained, heavy as a hand. They cut toward Lotus Road through a market that resisted neat. Roshika appeared as if conjured because the city is small for people who know where to stand. She was outside a noodle stall, checking her phone and her patience. Kang-Jin slowed. Spill, he murmured. Lena didn't fake it. She was a body that had been in the ocean last night. Her hands were bandaged. Her center of balance felt least. She stumbled just enough. Her paper bowl tilted. Soy and chili striped Roshika's blazer like evidence. "Oh God, I'm so sorry," Lena said, genuine for once. Roshika flinched, eyes blazing, then clocked Lena's shaking and swallowed the reprimand. No, don't worry. It's fine." "It's not," Lena said, already lifting napkins, dabbing, apologizing with the urgency of someone who needed to be forgiven for more than sauce. Roshika shrugged out of the blazer to save the blouse. The lanyard swung. A plastic card winked like a small stupid sun. Lena said, "Let me," and Roshika said, "It's fine," and people moved around them, and in a city that prides itself on noticing everything, no one noticed a hand as careful as a prayer. They parted with too many apologies. Roshika walked away in a white blouse that looked like surrender from a distance. Lena stood with a blazer she had no intention of laundering and a card that hummed against her palm. "You're a terrible person," she told Kang-Jin under her breath. "I'm adaptable," he said. They turned onto Lotus Road. St. Jude's was a modest box with a modest bell and a pride that had weathered better storms than men like Pereira. Inside, the air cooled. A woman lit a candle and did not look at them, which was its own kind of grace. The side door to the rectory had a keypad and an old brass handle. Lena swiped the card. The lock accepted the lie. They slipped into an office that smelled like paper and the last 3 decades. There were framed certificates for charities that needed certificates more than money. There was a safe pretending to be a cupboard. 3 left, 1 right, Kang-Jin murmured at the dial, amused at the predictability of men who don't believe they are. He hesitated at a number like he was listening for a piano string, then turned. The safe clicked, resigned. Inside, ledgers bound in black cloth, each labeled in a tidy hand. He slid one out, opened to a page that felt warm with fresh ink. Lena read names she'd never heard and flight numbers she knew too well. Dates. Amounts. In the margins, a neat dot beside the code that matched her flight. She took out her phone. Photographed fast, steady. The pages turned. The story wrote itself in pen and cruel convenience. Footsteps sounded in the corridor. Not quick. Not slow. The kind of walk a man uses when he has keys and time. Kang-Jin closed the book, slid it back, spun the dial without looking. He put the card in Lena's hand and the blazer over her arm and the door handle under his. The footsteps stopped outside. He looked at her and for once the decision in his eyes was a question. "Ready?" he whispered. She nodded, and the word didn't come from her throat so much as her spine. The handle turned from the other side. "If you're in, hit subscribe, it only gets tighter." The door opened on a man who smiled like he'd already won. Mr. Pereira filled the frame with the comfort of someone who'd never been made uncomfortable. Linen suit, gold ring, eyes that took inventory and found nothing missing. He glanced past them into the office, clocked the safe, the desk, the air. "Oh," he said pleasantly. "You found the light switch." Kang-Jin stepped sideways, just enough to block Lena without looking like it. "We were looking for the restroom." Pereira laughed, soft and indulgent. "Of course you were." He lifted his hand and the corridor answered with footsteps. Not hurried. Certain. Lena's heart thudded once, hard enough to hurt. She tightened her grip on the phone in her pocket, the photos burning like contraband. Pereira's eyes slid to her bandaged hands. "You survived the sea," he said, almost admiring. "That's rare." "So is a church safe with airline ledgers," Kang-Jin replied. Pereira's smile didn't move. "I'm afraid you misunderstand how this works. You don't take books. Books take you." The footsteps reached the doorway. 2 men this time, shoulders filling space, the kind who didn't ask questions because they'd been paid to forget the answers. Kang-Jin moved. He stepped into Pereira's space and hooked the gold ring with 2 fingers, twisting just enough to make the man hiss. The movement was small, efficient, ugly in its intimacy. One of the guards reached, too late. Kang-Jin drove an elbow into the man's throat, turned, and kicked the other's knee backward until it bent the wrong way. Pereira screamed, not loud, but offended. "Run," Kang-Jin said to Lena, already repositioning. She didn't argue. She bolted past the desk, through the side door, down a narrow hall that smelled like dust and old incense. A shout rose behind her. Feet thundered. She burst into the courtyard, sunlight slapping her blind. People turned. A woman crossed herself. Lena vaulted a low wall and hit the street running, the card clutched in her fist, the photos in her pocket suddenly heavier than the ocean. A hand grabbed her arm. She twisted, drove her taped palm into a throat with a sound like tearing cloth, and didn't stop to see if it worked. She ducked into a crowd, then another, then a bus whose door opened on a sigh. She shoved coins at the driver and wedged herself between bodies that smelled like soap and heat and not dying. The bus lurched forward. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered without breathing. Yes. Busan Winter, a voice said, old and tired and sharp. You took your time. Where is he? Lena whispered. Alive, the voice said. For now. The line went dead. The bus rattled over potholes and prayer. Lena pressed her forehead to the glass and watched Colombo smear itself into color. She counted stops because counting gave her something to hold. 3, 4, 5. She jumped off at a market where fish gleamed like secrets and ran until her lungs burned. A motorbike skidded beside her. A helmeted rider jerked his chin. Get on. She hesitated for half a second, long enough to die in a different story, then swung a leg over and clung. They tore through streets that didn't belong to maps and stopped behind a corrugated gate painted blue. The rider killed the engine and lifted the helmet. Hyun. He looked older than his voice. You move like you've been chased before, he said. I have, Lena said. I am. Hyun nodded. So is he. They slipped inside a compound that pretended to be storage. Hyun opened a door that led to a room with one bed, one chair, and a view of the sea that felt like an insult. Kang-Jin lay on the bed with a split lip and a cut along his brow that bled politely. His sling was gone. His shoulder was taped by someone who knew anatomy and consequences. Lena crossed the room in 3 steps and stopped short of touching him, afraid her hands would break something invisible. You were supposed to run, he said, voice hoarse, eyes finding her like a habit. I did, she said. Then I came back. Hyun closed the door and leaned against it. Pereira is furious, he said conversationally. Which means he's afraid. Which means your father will be pleased. Kang-Jin closed his eyes for a second. Don't call him that. Hyun shrugged. Blood does. Get out, Kang-Jin said quietly. Hyun studied them both, then nodded. I'll buy you time. Not much. He paused at the door. Your brother landed an hour ago. The room cooled without changing temperature. Jun-suk? Kang-Jin asked. Hyun's mouth flattened. With gifts. The door closed. Silence filled the space like water. Lena sat on the chair because her legs refused to negotiate. You didn't tell me about a brother. I didn't tell you about a lot of things, Kang-Jin said. I was hoping they'd stay theoretical. She laughed once, sharp. Your theory just tried to kill us in a church. He pushed himself upright, pain ghosting his face. You could still walk away. Don't, she said. Not like that. I mean it, he said. He won't stop. You're leverage now. She leaned forward. Then don't let me be. A knock came. 3 taps. A pause. 3 taps again. Kang-Jin stood, slow, steady. He opened the door. Jun-suk smiled with his whole mouth. He was younger than Kang-Jin by a handful of years and older by a lifetime. His suit fit like a threat. 2 men flanked him, hands empty, intent full. Brother, Jun-suk said, stepping inside without asking. His eyes slid to Lena. Assessed. Catalogued. You brought home a souvenir. Leave, Kang-Jin said. Jun-suk laughed. Father sends his regards. And his disappointment. He gestured. One of the men produced a phone and placed it on the table. The screen lit with a video. Lena, exiting the clinic earlier, zoomed in from across the street. Then another angle. The tuk-tuk. The alley. The bakery. You move fast, Jun-suk said. But not alone. Kang-Jin stepped between Jun-suk and Lena again, a reflex now. What do you want? Jun-suk's eyes flicked to the sea outside. To clean up a mess. You made one. She is part of it. No, Kang-Jin said. Jun-suk's smile thinned. You don't get to negotiate. He nodded once. The men moved. Kang-Jin moved faster. He drove into the first guard, used the wall, took the second's balance and left him kissing the floor. Jun-suk didn't flinch. He waited for Kang-Jin like he knew how this ended. A gun appeared in Jun-suk's hand, quiet and final. Lena didn't think. She grabbed the lamp from the table and swung. Glass shattered. The gun went off. The sound cracked the room open. Pain lanced through her shoulder, hot and immediate. She screamed and fell back against the chair, the world narrowing to red and white. Kang-Jin, she heard herself say, as if calling him could pull her back into focus. He was on Jun-suk, hands around his brother's wrist, twisting until bone argued. The gun clattered. Jun-suk kneed him hard, brutal and practiced. They broke apart, breathing, mirrors of violence raised by the same house. Sirens wailed in the distance, Hyun's work, no doubt. Jun-suk smiled, blood on his teeth. This is why father keeps me, he said. I finish things. He stepped back. The men retreated with him, melting into corridors like smoke that knew where the vents were. Kang-Jin dropped to his knees beside Lena, hands hovering, afraid. Stay with me, he said, voice breaking its own rules. She nodded, teeth chattering, shock blooming. I'm here. He pressed cloth to the wound, cursed himself, cursed the room, cursed the family that made this normal. He tore his shirt for pressure, his hands steady because they had to be. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't want. Stop, she said, breath shallow. Don't apologize. Fix. He did. Hyun burst in with a med kit and a face that had aged another year. Ambulance is a bad idea, he said. We'll do this quiet. They stitched and bound and breathed. The pain receded to a manageable roar. Lena lay back, sweating, alive. Night fell without ceremony. They sat on the floor because the bed felt like a lie. The sea outside kept being itself. I should send you away, Kang-Jin said. She looked at him, eyes clear despite everything. You already tried. You failed. A laugh escaped him, small and broken. He won't stop. Then neither will we, she said. He watched her like she was a new language. You don't know what that costs. I know what leaving costs, she said. I've done it before. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them the decision was made. Then I stop running, he said. I end this. How? By becoming the thing they believe in, he said softly. Long enough to destroy it. She reached for his good hand and held it like a promise she was willing to test. Don't do it alone. He squeezed back, once. Agreement. Outside, the sea shifted, patient as ever. Somewhere in the city, Pereira was bleeding money. Somewhere else, a father was waiting to see which son would come home. And in a quiet room by the water, two people understood that survival had chosen them for something far more dangerous than drowning. The sea was calm the morning Kang-Jin decided to go home. Not calm like mercy, calm like a held breath. He stood on the veranda of the coastal estate Hyun had rented under 3 names, watching fishermen haul in nets that glittered with ordinary life. His shoulder ached dully, the bandage clean and tight. Inside, Lena slept on her side, one arm tucked under a pillow, breathing steady in a way that felt like a gift he didn't deserve. He turned when Hyun cleared his throat. They've set the table, Hyun said. Your father wants a meeting. Tonight. Private dock. Kang-Jin nodded once. Where? Bentota, Hyun said. Old family boat. No phones. No witnesses. No mercy, Kang-Jin said. Hyun's mouth twitched. Mercy was never on the guest list. Kang-Jin stepped inside and watched Lena sleep for a moment longer than necessary. He knelt, brushed a curl from her cheek without waking her, then stood before the guilt could argue him back into stillness. When she woke, the room felt altered. You're leaving, she said, not accusing, just stating. Yes. Alone. He hesitated. That was answer enough. She sat up, careful of her shoulder. Say it out loud. I'm going to end this, he said. If I bring you, you become currency. If I don't, I become a target anyway, she finished. Don't lie to me to feel noble. He closed the distance between them and dropped to one knee so they were eye level. If I fail, Hyun will move you. New name. New route. You won't hear from me again. And if you succeed. He smiled without warmth. Then I lose everything that made succeeding possible. She studied him, then nodded once. Go. He reached for her hand. She caught his wrist first, firm. Come back. I will try, he said. That's not good enough. I will come back, he said, and meant it the way men mean vows when they don't believe in luck. Bentota's dock smelled like oil and old salt. The family boat waited with its lights dimmed, hull polished into a black mirror. Kang-Jin stepped aboard alone. His father did not rise. Chairman Seo sat at a small table, tea steaming, eyes sharp as ever. Jun-suk leaned against the rail, arm in a sling of his own now, smile thin and unfinished. You look tired, the chairman said. I swam, Kang-Jin replied. Jun-suk laughed. Still dramatic. Enough, the chairman said. He set the cup down with care. You embarrassed us. Kang-Jin met his gaze. You killed people. People die, the chairman said. Families endure. You paid for a plane to fail. A delay, the chairman corrected mildly. Weather finished the rest. Silence swelled between them like a tide deciding which way to turn. You brought proof, Jun-suk said. That was a mistake. Kang-Jin slid a drive onto the table. Every reporter in Colombo already has it. The chairman's eyes flicked, once. Then you came for absolution. I came to trade, Kang-Jin said. Me. For her. Jun-suk's smile widened. I told you she'd be leverage. No, Kang-Jin said, steady. She's the line. The chairman studied his son like a specimen that had grown a conscience. You want me to dismantle Pereira. To pull money back. To admit fault. I want you to end it, Kang-Jin said. Publicly. And in exchange? I walk away, Kang-Jin said. I sign everything over. I disappear. Jun-suk scoffed. You think he'll choose you over the company? The chairman lifted a hand. I think he will choose the company, he said. Which means choosing the version of this that survives. He leaned forward. Pereira has become expensive. Jun-suk stiffened. Father. Enough, the chairman said again. He turned back to Kang-Jin. You leave tonight. You take nothing. If you ever surface near our business again, I won't miss. Kang-Jin nodded. And her. She leaves the country by morning, the chairman said. Unharmed. Jun-suk's jaw tightened. You're letting him win. The chairman's eyes cut. I am preventing a loss. A single shot cracked the air. Jun-suk staggered, surprise blooming into pain as he fell to his knees, blood darkening his sleeve. Kang-Jin spun. The chairman stood, gun steady, expression unchanged. Loose ends, the chairman said. Are costly. He looked at Kang-Jin. Go. Kang-Jin did not hesitate. By dawn, Colombo burned with headlines. Pereira was arrested at St. Jude's, ledger in hand, candle wax on his shoes. Statements fell like dominoes. A senator resigned. An airline CEO wept on camera and said the word unthinkable until it lost meaning. Hyun met Kang-Jin at the edge of the city with a car that didn't belong to anyone important anymore. It's done, Hyun said. Your father kept his word. And the cost? Hyun glanced away. Your brother will live. He won't forgive. Kang-Jin nodded. I wouldn't expect him to. They drove until the city thinned into green. Lena waited where the river met the sea, hair pulled back, shoulder still wrapped. She stood when she saw him, hope and caution braided tight. You came back, she said. He stopped in front of her and breathed like a man learning again. I'm free, he said. Which means I'm nothing. She smiled, small and fierce. Good. I like starting from nothing. Weeks later, the world settled into new habits. Lena took a route assignment that skimmed Europe like a promise. Kang-Jin took a job no one would write about, advising companies on how not to become monsters. They learned the shape of each other in layovers and quiet kitchens, in scars that spoke when weather changed. One evening, snow dusted a city that wasn't supposed to get snow. They stood by a window and watched it pretend to belong. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "The power," he said. "Yes." He thought of the sea, of rope and wind and the exact angle between life and water. "I miss knowing what I'm for," he said. She took his hand. "You're for choosing." He laughed, the sound unburdened. "That's inconvenient." "Get used to it," she said. The snow thickened. Somewhere far away, a man counted losses and called them victories. Somewhere closer, two people learned how to live without being watched. And the sea, patient as ever, kept its distance. If this story stayed with you, like and follow for more cinematic stories. And in the comments, when saving someone costs you everything, would you still choose to stay?